welcome back to my Triangle Strategy bonus LTCs. Here's Chapter 7U. This chapter is rough. The enemies are scattered and difficult to clump due to many of them being ranged. The map is also difficult to ascend without at least 4 jump, so Anna and Maxwell will be climbing to the top all on their own. Thankfully, they'll be backed up by Archibald and Decimal, whose high range abilities allow them to ignore the height disadvantage. The map does have 2 lifts that are meant to make it easier to reach the top, but the left one is difficult to reach quickly without the aforementioned 4 jump, and the right one is too far away from the deployment positions to be useful, especially when there are already enemies immediately within reach. Speaking of the right side, without Medina, we need a squad of self-sufficient units to take care of the side fight on their own. For that, we've taken our 2 TP Refreshing Mages and Avlora, all of whom have received finely tuned speed accessories for well-timed turns.
I do not surrender!
Defeat is not an option.
You're open.
With this backbait on the shield bearer, 2 of them will line up nicely for a Scorch and Icy Breath later on. Archibald's inescapable arrow here doesn't seem very helpful at first glance, as there's a healer nearby who will heal most of the damage off, but for some reason, this chip damage will suddenly cause the archer to not attack later on, which is certainly helpful for Maxwell's survivability. Decimal is our next key unit, who will be taking advantage of the low ground to spam target height 5, though it isn't quite as good as you might expect, as the enemies are so spread out that many of them are still out of his reach. Additionally, enemies on the level right above him, such as the one by Anna, aren't actually high enough to get hit by it. Finally, let's talk about Serenoa. In most maps, he mostly feels like a filler unit who we'd probably undeploy if we had a choice. However, in this map, he really pulls his weight, with Hawk Dive dealing great damage to the enemies on the middle levels, who would otherwise be out of reach. This greatly reduces the load on Anna and Maxwell, allowing them to primarily focus on the top level.
Those are not to be trifled with. This will serve well.
As one last parting gift, Benedict gives Anna a 2 full turn to apply Deadly Blazes and start chipping down Landroid. Because Decimal had to move to that specific tile to hit the sword fighter on the top level, we won't be able to get him into our double items formation. However, since that would only bring him to 3 TP, I'd have to use Battlecry anyway, so it wouldn't make much of a difference, as Battlecry alone is already enough to allow him to use target height 5 again.
Here you go.
Long life.
Here you go.
I shall protect you. With a single blow!
While I would love to use triple thrust for the extra damage on Landroid, the sword fighter also needs additional chip to die to Decimal, so I'm forced to use the significantly weaker basic attack. Interestingly, Avlora chooses to use a simple firestone instead of whacking someone with her giant sword. Not only that, but she then walks straight into the fire, chipping herself down further. However, the fire created by the stone will play a key part in the right team winning their skirmish quickly enough. Normally, Maxwell is supposed to die to the archer and pop his revive. However, because he dodged a sword fighter earlier, he lives on low HP. This is actually bad for me, as Landroid will see lethal damage on him and attack him on his next turn, which will put him in an unfavorable position. To avoid this, I budgeted 1 QP for Restore, as Maxwell's evasion is high enough that he tends to dodge at least 1 attack. With Corentin's Speed Amulet, he's able to take his turn before the sword fighter and put down ice with Icy Breath. This lowers the sword fighter's movement, so it's in the perfect formation for Frederica's follow-up Scorch, who was given the weaker speed ring so that her turn would be after.
With years comes wisdom.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
I shall try my level best. This will serve well.
For the greater good.
While previously I was able to recharge target high 5 with Battlecry, I'm now only able to get Decimal to 2 TP with his double items. However, because Medina is so fast with her 2 speed bracelets, she'll actually get another turn in before Decimal, allowing her to bring him up to the necessary 4 TP. Very nice how him skipping the first double item still works out in the end.
Prepare to face the Dawn Spear. Prepare yourself. That went well.
With Landroid's attack and the fire that we've set, Avlora is able to perfectly die and activate her Resurrection Earring. It's important that she dies now instead of later, as I'll need her in Desperate Strike 2 range on a later turn. If she remains on her first life, she won't take enough damage from the incoming enemies and fall short of the damage threshold.
Death from above! Death from above!
After Avlora begs the sword fighters to bring her as low as they can, they perfectly set up for another Scorch, and since I have the fire tile, Frederica is able to activate Magic Ablaze for a damage boost, which is going to matter later on.
Here you go. Here you go. I'm in your debt. Here I go.
From this tile, Decimal is able to barely reach the sword fighter on the left and the healer on the right, while also taking out Landroy thanks to Archibald's critical blow. It's unfortunate that I had to burn my in tandem for this, but otherwise the sword fighter would go down the stairs and be too low for target height 5, while Landroy would also get another attack in.
If that went well,
It's over.
well met.
The enemies on the right are in a bit of an awkward formation, and with the healer's turn coming up, we don't have time to wait for our right squad's turns to come up. With a 2-full turn, Archibald can get up the stairs to reduce the height damage penalty and secure the kill, despite the healer's best efforts to hide their back. Finally, with Desperate Strike 2 ready, Avlora, surrounded by enemies while on the verge of death, retaliates and takes them all out with Bloody Cross, just as the devs intended, to finish up Chapter 7U in 35 turns.